Ever since Dark Souls first arrived in the gaming scene, there have been many other companies that have tried to emulate its success. Some have been fairly well received, and some have gone on to be quite successful. But I think outside of the From Software titles, none have been able to surpass them in quality or execution. Well, except for one of them, Lies of P. If you look at some footage of Lies of P, you would be forgiven for thinking that this was a game made by From Software. Everything from its story, level design, and combat was very similar. Some have even said that it has perfected the Souls-like formula for them. Now, when Lies of P came out, I did not play it. But about a month ago, I finally got it, and I can't help but agree with all of its praise. I've already played the game twice, and I'm close to finishing it a third time. The only two other Souls-like I've beaten this many times have been Sekiro and the legendary Bloodborne. That's how good I think Lies of P is. So you would understand my excitement when the DLC was finally announced in the last PlayStation State of Play.
Oh! Lies of P! We're getting Lies of P!
Now, because I've played the base game a couple of times, I am somewhat knowledgeable in the lore of Lies of P. At least, knowledgeable enough to feel confident in doing a trailer breakdown video. And that's exactly what I wanted to do in this video. I want to bring you along as I take a closer look at the trailer of Lies of P Overture. And first, we have to start with something no one was expecting. Lies of P Overture does not take place after the events of the base game. It's actually a prequel story, but not a traditional prequel in the sense of, let's say, God of War Goes to Sparta, for example. Because in Lies of P Overture, we are going to be time traveling to the past. Now, if you've only played Lies of P once, the game might not strike you as having time travel elements in its story. But if you pay close attention and read some of the item descriptions, this will become very evident. One of the first items you collect in the game is a pocket watch that literally has the power to turn back time. In fact, when you die, you can see this very same watch being put back together. This pocket watch was given to you by Sophia, and near the end of the game, she confirms that she can manipulate time using Ergo. It's once again a small detail to show you how important time is in the story of Lies of P. But how exactly are we traveling back in time in the DLC? Well, in what fans consider the good ending of Lies of P, we see Sophia being brought back to life in the form of a puppet. So she will most likely be responsible for taking us there. And I think she will once again use the butterfly from the intro of the game to guide P to his time traveling adventure. And I know exactly how she will do this. She will use the mysterious Stargazer from the main game. In case you don't remember, there is only one Stargazer in the game that is inoperable. It's found right after exiting St. Frangelico's Cathedral, near some tombstones. And when you first approach it, you will notice that this Stargazer is covered in branches, almost as if it's been abandoned for many years. And when you try to interact with it, you will get a message that says, "You cannot use this right now." Now, it has been often speculated by Lies of P fans that this Stargazer will be used as a starting point for the DLC. And I can confidently say that they were 100% correct. Because the trailer for the DLC shows Sophia's butterfly heading in that direction. I know this is the case because I can find the dilapidated house P is standing in front of in the trailer. And if you walk just a couple of steps from it, you can find the mysterious Stargazer. So I am confident that we will use the Stargazer as a means to travel back into Krat's past. But how far back exactly? Well, in the PlayStation blog it says that the events of the DLC will take place a little before the puppet frenzy begins. And one of the first things we see to indicate that we're back in the past, it's what seems to be the final steps of the construction of Benini's submarine. The one P used in the base game to reach the Alchemist Island. Also, just in case it wasn't obvious, the submarine was a nice little callback to the story of Pinocchio where he gets swallowed by a great whale. That's why they gave the submarine these little teeth in front. Anyway, next in the trailer we see a completely new location, which is most likely a museum of sorts. I'm only saying this because of the giant woolly mammoth in the center of the room. Also, something interesting I noticed was a dead person impaled in one of the mammoth's tusks. Now, we know this DLC takes place before the puppet frenzy began, so we shouldn't see gruesome murder scenes like this one. At least not displayed so gruesomely out in the open like this one. Unless it was done by a puppet whose ego awakened much earlier than the others. The serial killer puppet Arlecchino. At least, I'm hoping that's the case. Arlecchino was by far one of my favorite characters from the main game. So I hope we learn more about him during the time his killings were taking place. Now, next in the trailer we see a familiar feline, or at least the kitten version of it. If you don't remember, this cat in the base game was used to test your humanity. If in your playthrough you didn't lie or help any of the NPCs, you would essentially remain a puppet, meaning that whenever P would try to pet the cat, it would hiss at him. But if P gained humanity, he would be able to pick up and play with him. Now, something interesting about the cat's presence in this trailer is that we can use him as a tool to give an estimate as to how much time has passed since the puppet frenzy began, something that was a bit of a mystery in the base game. Now, assuming that this cat is an adult in the base game, and cats only live about 13 to 20 years, it means that this is how long the puppet frenzy happened in the base game, because the DLC takes place in time a little bit before the puppet frenzy begins. So if we see this cat as a kitten in the DLC and as an adult in the base game, we can say that the puppet frenzy couldn't have been older than 20 years. I know most of you don't care about that, but it was a small nerdy detail I picked up on. Anyway, next in the trailer we see P dancing in front of a circus puppet, who seems to be the same kind of puppet that you can use as training dummies in the base game. Also, if you look in between P and the circus puppet, you will see an action figure of the Parade Master, the first big boss of the main game. So most likely, this is the circus we come across at the beginning of the game, before it's abandoned. And who knows, we might even see the Parade Master while he was still just a circus puppet. Next we see probably one of the coolest looking bosses I've ever seen in any game, a workshop engineer controlling a very unique puppet. I come to the conclusion that she's an engineer from Geppetto's workshop because she seems to be using the same type of glove that Geppetto used to control the nameless puppet. But this is just a small theory, she could also be a high-ranking member of the Alchemist. After all, both the Alchemist and the workshop used to be close allies. Next in the trailer is another big boss fight, and I wish I could tell you who this is, but I can't. It most likely will be an alchemist who experimented a little bit too much with his evolution juice.
What did he say?
You know, the ones you can find all over the Grand Exhibition in the main game. Also, if you look in the background, you will see a very odd decoration on the wall. This design looks almost identical to the ones you find on their island. Something else that's interesting about this boss is that you can see him hatch from a similar pod where these other enemies hatch from in the game. Maybe this monster is what these other monsters would have turned into if P hadn't disturbed them. Next in the trailer is this thing, and look, I'm not even gonna try and guess what or who this is. I've seen some people say that this could be the leader of the Alchemists, Valentinus Monad, but I honestly don't see a resemblance. However, I do think whatever this is might have something to do with the portal Simon Manus opened at the end of the game. Both scenes look almost identical with the arms sprouting down. But by far, this is one of the most perplexing scenes in the trailer, so if anyone has any better ideas, I would love to hear them. Next in the trailer is possibly the most exciting character this DLC will expand on, the legendary Stalker. Now the legendary Stalker was not a character P came across in the base game, but she was mentioned in a couple of documents and made a brief appearance near the end of the game in a flashback of sorts. In this scene, it's implied that the person she's grieving over is the body of Carlos. So it makes sense for the DLC to depict her showing some distrust of someone who looks just like Carlos. Something else that fascinates me about the legendary Stalker is this brief mention of Gemini in the flashback.
Ugh, so annoying. Gemini, get rid of him. I'm off.
This is very odd because in Gemini's current state, he wouldn't be able to get rid of anyone. He is just a cricket inside a lamp, which implies that at some point in history, Gemini was a person who had a close relationship with the legendary Stalker. Again, if you paid attention to the story of the main game, this DLC is going to be very exciting. Case in point is also the next scene in the trailer, which shows P most likely fighting an alchemist who has placed his brain inside a container Krang style. But what's really exciting here is the character that P summons to help him, Alidoro himself. If you don't remember, in the main game you come across a stalker named Alidoro, but much later in the story it's revealed that he isn't the real Alidoro. The person wearing his clothes was a close associate of him who betrayed him. The one in the trailer is 100% the real Alidoro, because if you look at the weapon he's using, you will notice that it's a two-dragon sword. A sword that a Eugenie confirms to have a little of her heritage.
But take good care of it. This weapon carries a little bit of my heritage.
The next thing I noticed in the trailer was this other boss fight. And once again, I'm not going to claim I know who this is, but what I'm almost sure of is that this boss is somehow related to the Walker Evolutions found in the main game. Because if you look at his brain, it is just as swollen as the Walker Evolutions, and he also seems to be bound up by chains and leather straps. So maybe this guy was the Proto-Walker Evolutions, an experiment that ultimately failed. And if I am correct in assuming this connection between this boss and the Walker Evolutions, it could mean that we'll learn who or what the Walker Evolutions is, a small but very intriguing mystery from the first game. The last thing of importance in the trailer is not something we see, but something we hear.
Nothing else comes close, not even my life. I swear I won't be late. Not again.
This is important because this is most likely a line spoken by the legendary Stalker, who in the first game regrets being too late to save Carlos.
God. No. I'm sorry. I was too late.
And in this trailer, she says that this time it won't happen. This, as we suspected, means that the legendary Stalker will be an ally and her story might end up in a very tragic manner, maybe sacrificing herself to save P, which would explain why she isn't present in the main game. Now, before being announced, I was excited for the DLC, but after learning that it will be a time-traveling adventure, I am way more excited because it seems that we're going to get answers to a lot of questions left from the main game. And it might do this in a very paradoxical way, because I suspect that the story of the DLC will loop back around to the start of Lies of P. Or who knows, he could just simply travel back in time and not affect the timeline in any way. But we could be looking at a paradoxical loop here. Now, there's a lot of things from the trailer that I didn't talk about because there's not much lore for me to discuss. But it also seems like the combat is going to be slightly faster than the one found in the base game. There's a couple of new weapons and Legion arms that I'm very excited to try out, like the Wolverine claws and the Robin Hood arm. It took them a while to announce this DLC, but it seems like they did it this way because there's going to be a lot of content in it. And I for one couldn't be more excited about it. But let me know what you think about the DLC announcement. Are you also excited to play it? Is there something in the trailer you noticed that I didn't? Whatever your thoughts are, make sure to leave them in the comments section below. Now, as always, I want to give a big thanks to all of my YouTube and Patreon members for supporting the channel monthly. As I always say guys, without your support, none of this would be possible. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. It may not seem like much, but trust me, it really does help. And with that said, thanks for watching. And remember, go forth in the name of Olympus.